Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Kirk Williamson coming to you from the Tri-Cities Coliseum, where tonight the Tri-City Americans host the Swift Current Broncos, the best team in all of Major Junior Hockey. And there's Sheldon Kennedy racing in behind the Swift Current net. Kennedy at the right point. Top of the slot, left. Lambert drive! Drop back pass, Sheldon Kennedy.
Kennedy does a good job of pumping off the puck.
Once again, Kennedy playing with fire.
Guys get knocked out by Sheldon Kennedy. One-on-one break for it. Kennedy shot!
One of the things that really bothered me for a long time is the inability to be my best. I wished I could have been able to play the game the way I feel today, mentally. When they talk about that life being stolen and stuff, those are the things. So then you live with that regret.
Swift Current shaped my life. What went on in that town affected my life forever. But Swift Current doesn't have the power in my life that it once did. It doesn't affect me to drive by the place that it happened or where I had to go. It's just kind of, it's just, you see it in a different perspective. You know, it's not a big deal.
Shock and disbelief hangs over the entire province tonight following a tragic bus accident near
The hockey team turned into a tragedy this afternoon when the team bus slid off an icy road near Swift Current, Saskatchewan. The bus was carrying members of the Swift Current Broncos of the Western Hockey League. 2 of the players died when they were thrown from the wreck, and 2 others died when they were trapped underneath the bus.
A memorial service will be held on Sunday for 4 young hockey players with the Swift Current Broncos.
It's a comeback team this year. And look at that. This is our toughest challenge.
I see this picture in my head every day. A seat flies in the air and there's Chris, half under the bus. Yeah. His lower half's under the bus and his upper half's above the bus, gasping for air. We couldn't do anything for him. And, you know, I carry that with me every day.
And I remember I couldn't stop shaking, couldn't sit down, I couldn't stop.
Yeah, and you know what? I can't once remember anyone asking me if I was all right.
Yeah. That bus accident, it was devastating. We dealt with it by getting a bottle of booze and talking about it ourselves. "16 years old to 20-year-olds just lost 4 of their friends. Guys needed some help. Graham James was coach of Swift Current, and we were denied that therapy from Graham because I think if I send these guys to therapy, they might discuss about what was going on in his life and what he was doing.
Sorrow found me when I was young. Sorrow waited, sorrow won. Sorrow, they put me on the pill. It's in my honey, it's in my milk. Don't leave my hyper heart alone. On the water, cover me in rag and bone. Sympathy, 'cause I don't wanna get over you. don't wanna get over you. I don't wanna get over you.
I loved getting on the ice, on a clear sheet of ice when it hadn't snowed yet and it just had frozen. So then there was no snow. It was just like you're skating on a mirror. The sound it makes underneath, and I remember that. We only had 150 people that lived in our town, so we'd go play hockey at noon hours, and it was just the way of life. That's the heartbeat of these little towns. It's probably no different than the football field or the baseball diamonds in the U.S. That's where people come together, and that's, where people socialize, and for us it wasn't any different. That's where you grew up, and that's where you laughed, and that's where you cried, and that's where you sorted things out, and we'd play for 4 or 5 hours underneath the yard light, out in like minus 20 degree weather. And that's what I remember. I remember those times. It was a sense of freedom, I guess, for me. I think being outside, whether it be on a snowmobile or skating like that, it was always a sense of freedom and away from everything that was going on. But we were running a big farm, but my dad was, he's a pretty aggressive man, and, quite verbally abusive to all of us. I think there was a lot of fear in our house, and
I think Sheldon really expected a lot from Dad. Oh, we all did, I think. But Dad was he wasn't a very nice person to us, especially to my mom. I don't remember him and my mom really saying too much good stuff to each other at all. When people were around, he was very, very nice to them. But as far as us, he was pretty scary. And I think Sheldon really needed him, and he wasn't there.
I loved to get on my motorbike and get out of it and get away. It was no different when I got into junior hockey or into the NHL. The safest place I ever felt was on a vehicle, because I felt nobody could get me. Nobody could get at me.
We had a lot of good players around our area. We had one of the best teams in Manitoba for a small town, so that's something special. So you don't really realize that you're that much better than a lot of the kids.
Junior hockey teams would have young kids on a list. 50, each team was allowed 50 young kids as their list is for up-and-coming players. So I was 12, my brother was 13, we were on the same list.
So that made us both kind of excited, and I guess kind of realized that maybe we have a shot at this.
Graham James started scouting us after we attended a hockey school of his in the summer.
And Graham was a great hockey guy. Throughout his career, he achieved a lot. So everybody looking at him, that's what they saw. They saw Mr. Hockey God. Mr. Put all these guys through the NHL. Mr. I'm great with your young kids. I'm going to take them somewhere. And he would.
He showed a lot of concern for the boys, and he was a scout and a coach, so we were quite taken with how he was interested in the boys.
He came into a situation where we didn't have a great family atmosphere. Graham groomed us and our family, and they don't just
grab a child and abuse a child. I mean, they have to manipulate everybody, and that's what Graham did.
I remember when Graham James suggested that Sheldon go in and watch a hockey game with him in Winnipeg. And we let Sheldon go. He wanted to go, we let him go, and never thought anything of it. In our mind, he was taking Sheldon into Winnipeg to show him what junior hockey was like, and so on and so forth.
I remember, riding in there and just being excited to go into Winnipeg and being on the bus. So I was a little bit nervous, but felt that it was all safe and we're going to stay at Graham's. We were at the rink, we were meeting lots of people, and Graham seemed to know a lot of people, and he was introducing me to, all these people, and I was young and very young, and then I remember going back to his apartment, and there was a little cot in the corner, and it was just absolutely pitch black in there, like he taped off all the windows, and I was wondering what was going on. I was not asleep, and I remember I heard Graham crawling around the room, but I couldn't see him. So I'm thinking, okay, this is weird. And then all of a sudden, he started touching my feet, and then I got really scared, and I remember kicking him away. And I heard some ruckus going on, and he flipped the lights on, and he was lying in bed with the shotgun. It was terrifying. Pretty much from that point on, I was too scared to push back because I was scared of what was going to happen. The physical thing was one thing. It was the fear of that emotional, like, I can't see this guy, what's going to happen? And then the dream that I still have today. The fear of Graham walking and crawling around the room. The anticipation of when they're going to touch you. The fear of somebody in your room, and the fear of feeling unsafe, and the fear of them getting you, even though you're in a safe place. Nothing was said about it the next day. Graham had never mentioned anything. Nothing. It was like nothing happened. Right? He would say, geez, you were dreaming lots last night. And I'm thinking to myself, fuck, I wasn't dreaming, right? Like, I'm not dreaming. I know what happened, but I couldn't say it. I remember going home on the bus and just, my life changed from that point on.
He is a former professional hockey player, well known to Canadians, but today he had a new audience, the United States Senate.
14 years after he came forward with a story that rocked the hockey world, Calgary's Sheldon Kennedy, ex-NHLer turned advocate for change, today brought his message to Washington. This is one of those times where Canada leads the United States. Education on this issue in Canada far exceeds the case in the U.S. If that changes here, in part because of today, score one for Sheldon Kennedy.
I dreamed of playing in the National Hockey League. For me, the dream came true. I played for the Detroit Red Wings, the Boston Bruins, the Calgary Flames. But it's not my dream that I'm best known for. It's my nightmare. We have to give people the tools so they can report it. These issues carry fear. So if we can eliminate that fear and give people confidence to act on their gut feeling, we're going to get a lot more of these parents and these coaches and these leaders and these teachers reporting and listening to our kids. Our kids are telling. We're not acting.
What do you say to those people that say, oh, you're just looking for attention? Because that's what happened to me and my mother when we were both assaulted.
I think that's the difficulty and the confusion of these issues. This isn't somebody jumping around from the corner of the tree in most cases. Most of the time, these people are either in your organization, they're in your family. A lot of times, they're parents. Their dads, their stepdads, their uncles, their grandpas, their family friends. Look at the shame and the guilt that's going to come along the family if the kids come forward. Here's, Graham James. I mean, he was the biggest dude and, the most power guy in this city. I'm 15. Well, who's going to believe me?
Hi, Sheldon.
How are you?
I'm all right. My heart is just shaking. And my name's Mickey, and I'm 22, and I'm in the Child and Youth Worker program. I was molested by my father, and so was my sister. And it's all... Sorry. I remember a lot of nights where I would... I used to wear gowns when I was younger, long gowns. And my mom would go to work. She worked overnights. And I remember so many nights waking up. And I would be, completely naked in my parents' bed. And that nightgown would be at the side of the bed. And I would wake up, and either I would wake up alone, I would wake up to something being done to me, or I would wake up with him sleeping. And I remember one time where I woke up and I went to go get my gown because I just wanted to leave. And he's like, "Where are you going?" I was like, I'm just going to the bathroom. And he's like, "Well, don't you take a long time?" Every time I would wake up, there was dots everywhere in the room. And I was told that, from counselors, that sexual abuse victims will sometimes, they can identify with something or an object in the room where something happens. So the dots might not necessarily have been there because I've never seen them ever again in my life. But I would wake up and it would just be thousands of dots everywhere. Like these little tiny dots are very tiny. And what I would do is I would just wake up, things would be happening, and I would just count and just count and count until the numbers didn't even make sense anymore. And that's sort of what I would do until I would fall asleep again. It's so interesting that I could feel that, I could feel that it was wrong. And I was old enough to know that this is my dad, and my dad doesn't do this to me. Dads don't do this. This is not what happens between a dad and a daughter. I'm just curious if you have brothers and sisters and a mom or a dad, because with me, I just find that they don't want to speak about it, and they don't want to talk about it, and they won't ask me questions. And I've tried to reach out to them, and the 3 people that I need to sit down with me won't. And I just wondered if you have any advice for that.
I think that, my advice and for me and what I had to do is make sure that I could take care of me. And I had expectations. I always had these expectations that this person needs to know and that person needs to know, and I need to just get this from that person, and I just need to talk to them. And I think that for me, I needed to just make sure that I was okay inside me and accept the fact that this happened to me, and how do I make myself better. But for a long time,
I was looking outside of me for answers that people couldn't give.
Out of the play, into the board. He is down on the ice. Brian, he was hit hard, and I believe it was courtesy of Troy Kennedy.
Kennedy losing his helmet. He's turned out to be a tough customer, Steve. Troy, your younger brother comes to town, and how is that to take the ice against your brother?
It's pretty fun. We have a good time out there against each other. You know, we all through minor hockey and stuff, we played with each other, and then it wasn't up until last year was the first time we got to play against each other.
It out right wing to Kennedy. Kennedy, headman for Barnes. Drop back to Kennedy, stolen away by brother Sheldon.
When we first got into the WHL, we went together. Graham took an interest in Sheldon, taking him holidays in the summer, and I was kind of jealous. I was kind of like, I wonder why he's not interested in me. You know, like what did I do?
Thank you very much, Bernie. With us now, Sheldon Kennedy, one of the leaders of the Swift Current Broncos. He scored the opening goal of today's game, but the obvious question, what happened in the second period?
Well, it's always been a weak period for us. I think we gave up 10 goals in the first 4 games that we played. And
You're into the spotlight at 15. People are asking you for your autographs, and you know, you're the star of these towns.
You know, I think it's a lesson to some of our guys early in the season that you can't relax at any point.
But the guy was, every time I was with him, he was on you. So it wasn't like an isolated incident and this happened. It just happened all the time. I just remember wanting to die all the time. Is it normal for 15, 16-year-old kids to be over at a junior hockey coach's house till 5 in the morning on a weekday? Is that normal? Do you question the kid and leave the adult and the coach and the king of the community and never ask those questions? That ain't normal.
It started to escalate. When I got into high school in grade 9, he started molesting me in the passenger seat of his truck. My big question for you, Sheldon, is did you ever feel any personal guilt for what happened to you? And if so, how did you deal with that guilt?
Absolutely, it's the guilt. The only way I could get my head to shut off is drugs and alcohol.
Ray had been a friend of the family for long before I was even born. He clearly saw the potential of, oh, this kid is going to be the perfect kid for me to start, you know, preying upon. He slowly worked his way in when I was younger. He knew that I wasn't getting along with my parents when I was in grade school. So that was his big ploy, was putting a wedge and splitting the family when I was young.
Husband suffers from depression, and Ray came in and filled in for my husband, unfortunately, because he was in bed all the time. Did absolutely what he could, but Ray would play hours of street hockey with Graham. And at the time I thought it was, he's filling in, honorary uncle. But as time got later and later, it was getting annoying. Like I was living with another man.
He started coming by more Christmases, more Easters. He'd buy really over-the-top expensive gifts. I remember the first thing that he ever gave me, the first recollection I have of meeting him, he gave me a remote control car toy.
Graham's in grade 4 or 5, so he was probably, I don't know, 9 or 10. And for 2 years, that grooming process was happening, but I didn't know it.
I remember Graham came to our house in Fleming. And I greeted him like I would anybody else. And he actually spent the night there, downstairs, in our house. Came up the next morning and I served him breakfast like I would normally serve anybody. And found out later that he actually had molested Sheldon in our basement, in our house. Then came upstairs, sat down, had breakfast, and as if nothing had ever happened. Naturally, I didn't know what had happened. Can you imagine how Sheldon would have felt with me up there serving breakfast? I'll never, ever forget that he did that to us.
Ray started staying over on the weekends. Since we have a pop-up camper trailer, he started sleeping there, and there came a point where I was sleeping in the trailer with him. I think I was 11 turning 12 at that point, which is where I start to get the haze of memory. There was one morning where we woke up together in the trailer and he wanted to cuddle, and I really didn't want to. I just remember feeling so disgusted with myself for disappointing this man because he was doing so much for me.
We go ahead to Sakic, who went down the ice and got it to a wide open Peter Silverlund.
I remember, when we were 15 or 16, your parents are just, almost dying for their kids to be recognized and taken under these people's guidance. And all of a sudden, as soon as you enter that world, your parents or people that care for you, they're no longer welcome.
And if you ask for help or you show any sort of weakness, I mean, that's going to go against you.
I'm here now, and I can't go back out here for help. Because if I step outside of that, I'm breaking the code.
And well, you imagine that culture and, and the fear of me saying anything like, Graham's going to tell everybody that we're gay. It's going to make me look like I'm gay.
Yeah.
Not that it has anything to do with homosexuality, but, it was very confusing for a young kid.
Yeah.
I was Daddy's little girl, and everyone loved Mickey, and Daddy did everything for Mickey. And for me, it's like when I would hear that from anyone in my family, cousins, brothers, sister. No, I would never hear that from my sister. I remember wanting to scream at them. It's because I have to keep my mouth shut. You don't get it. I get everything I want. And I get money, and I get drives everywhere, and I get, the world handed to me because I have to keep this awful, secret. He would say, I just want you to know that, this is our little secret. I hate those words so much.
The biggest question that I kept asking me is why can't I say something about what's going on here? And why do I keep going back? And I think that it's no different than the domestic violence situations. We wonder why the wife keeps going back. And I think it's because of fear. There was this huge secret that was between us.
To watch Sheldon play out here, it was worth the price of admission every night because he's reckless abandon. There was nothing. He's not a great big guy. Hardest hitter I probably have ever seen because he would go. He didn't care. He didn't care if he broke his neck. He'd run people, and his skill level was crazy. It was so much fun to watch. And he made it that good without ever working out, lifting a weight, and partying the whole time.
I lived fast and dangerous. Yeah, it was very... trying everything, right, to get out of the way that you feel. And you know, I was a bit of a cutter too, and trying to tell people how much pain I was in. I was dating a girl at the time. I remember I was 16 and cutting myself, and then they have to go through that. Like, what are you doing? Just lost, like a kid lost. Those are freaking dark days.
There was one point where I had cut my arms from my wrist all the way up to the crevice of my elbow. And I was with Ray again, and we're in a church parking lot, and he saw the cuts on my arm, and he said, "What are those from?" He knew exactly what those were. He knew exactly why they were there, and he knew exactly where they came from. This is what he said to me. He said to me, "You don't need to do that to yourself. You don't need to hurt yourself for no reason." I thought it was a pretty justified reason.
I couldn't reach out. I had no one to reach out to. I just had myself, I had my pain, and I had a razor. And it was like those first, like that feeling of, like sometimes it was like I was replacing the abuse that I've been through, and I was harming my own body so that I could at least have that control. And sort of like take that power back, and it was like, you did this to your body, and now this is your body, and it's not his, and it's not anyone else's. Like, the scariest nights for me would be when I woke up with like 100 different cuts down my leg, and I don't remember doing it.
There was always, I guess, whispers, but nobody really knew. And so it was kind of one of those things where you didn't really know what the truth was.
This is the guy that teaches the players how to get into shape. Do you believe it?
You know, Sheldon was he was a good-looking kid who with long hair. He could fly on the ice, and guys on the bench on our team who played in the Western League or whatever would call him, you know, pretty boy, how's your boyfriend Graham, or some things like that. And we were like, what's he talking about? But you put two and two together, and it's kind of like there's something there.
When Graham came here, he was more or less, they moved him out of Moose Jaw because of rumors of stuff going on. We hired him. It's like the Catholic priests or whatever get in trouble. They seem to get to move around. No one cared. As long as you win in a small town, that's all that matters. Winning's everything. Like, they'll win at all costs. They don't care. And same here. We wanted to win, so you didn't care really what was going on.
That rally tonight in Happy Valley as the plot of a university scandal thickens.
They shouted their support from the administration steps.
He is being held accountable, and he has not even been charged.
More victims have come forward in the Penn State child sex abuse investigation.
You never ask a system to teach you values, because the values of the system is always cover up.
In the interest of the 10-year-old boy in the shower who had no one to come to his defense, don't you say something. The child in this case had no one to protect him.
When we first started educating about these issues, it was like our education was always about trying to catch the bad guy. And I think the reality is we really needed to focus on the 99% of good people. How did this happen? How does Graham James operate in a hockey system for 20 years and nobody's ever done anything? And we look back and, they're not all bad people. I look at the wreckage in this town of 20,000 people in the middle of the prairies in Western Canada. And I see these people there, and they're good people. But the shame and the guilt that they feel because of what went on in their town and the shame and the guilt that they feel that they didn't say something because they did have a gut feeling that something wasn't right.
Is there something special about sports that we need to understand? Is this a different context for sexual abuse than other kinds of contexts? Just your thoughts?
You know, I think when we look at the issues, it's really about power. And when we look at the influence a coach has on a player, there's a lot of power there. It's not just in the sporting world, but I think the sporting world makes the newspapers. You know, I really look at it as whenever there's that power of adult over child, things can happen. And I always tell people, I said, what an opportunity to really drive change.
It's really upsetting for people. And it's not something people want to talk about. And yet, it seems like to improve and keep it from happening, there has to be talk.
The whole goal is to try to create that platform for conversation to happen so people can actually have that chat and not get frustrated.
Thank you very much. I was surprised that it wasn't more full last night because we publicized like crazy, and I think that's an indication. Like, it's hard to get people to engage.
It's fairly raw yet here in Penn State. I think, you know, in a forum like that in Canada, we would get a lot different questions. I think it hits close to home for people, and it's a really delicate area.
Where does the point come where people choose success over child safety, right?
Yeah, swept under
whatever
the rug.
it is.
Like it was the dirt.
Oh, Christ, I'd never heard of the word in my life, right? Don't talk about that, right?
That's got to be one of the hardest things to overcome, that it's okay to talk
Well,
about
but
it
I
versus
think-
you don't want to talk about it because
Yeah.
you don't want to cast this bad light.
Yeah, see,
if
the
the shoe
thing
was
that,
on the other
the thing,
foot, I
you know
don't
what,
know.
that's always bothered me is Graham James got hauled into the office and he was confronted with what was going on, and they gave him another franchise. That one gets me.
Yeah.
That's when I got really bitter.
And don't say anything.
They tried to hush it all up, right? Graham James was doing this stuff before he even got to Swift Current.
Right. Yeah, he'd been moved because of it.
He should
was
have never
hired.
ended
He
up
was
here.
hired, and they had prior knowledge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So.
And no one was ever accountable.
No.
We tried to put distance between Graham and Ray, and Graham was at a stage where he hated us. It never put distance between them. They just went underground. Ray would meet Graham at school, take him out for lunch. There was a lot of that.
On my lunch periods, after school for 3-4 hours, we'd be sitting in the truck and we'd have a portable DVD player sitting on the dash and we'd be watching I Love Lucy.
I almost said Martha.
He'd sit there while we're watching the movies and he'd just grope me over top of my pants right there in the passenger seat of the truck. And I remember numerous times at lunchtime I would overeat constantly just so that I could have some sort of wrapper in my lap so that he wasn't able to be touching me. This is my home, this is my home neighborhood, and I walk in these areas all the time. Every time I come to this parking lot or walk across the field down there, I feel his eyes burning holes in the back of my head, and all I could think about during that time is that I don't want this anymore, but how do I end this?
Ray says, when you turn 16, you can move out and live with me. This was the plan all along. The day Graham ran away, one of the police officers said to me, just tell me about this Ray guy. And I said, oh, he's an honorary. At that point, I said, he was an honorary uncle. You know, he's been with my husband's family for many years. She said, just tell me about him. I said, okay, well, he drove a school bus that I know of for the Boys and Girls Club in Scarborough. I said, oh, he was a hockey coach. And I just, that point, it must have been 30 seconds before I went, oh my God, we have a problem.
The biggest thing that I was very wrong on was if I physically got away from Graham, then things were going to be all right. And that was so not the case. Graham had the power over me, even though he wasn't even there. They were getting a damaged bag of goods. It just, I needed to keep running.
You follow them in the newspapers, on the internet. Yeah, you're worried. You know, you're thinking, well, what the hell are you doing? You know, like myself, that was my dream to play in the NHL, and I'm thinking, what the fuck are you doing, Sheldon? You know, like, why are you screwing this up?
I mean, I did everything I could to get out of the game. Jail in Detroit, arrested. It was all in the newspapers. Mental institutions. I remember I got sent down to Rockville, Maryland, and I was stuck in a youth mental institution, and I had some cap on with wires hooked up to my head, getting shot full of Procaine, thinking there's something wrong with me. Yeah, and there was. I was consumed by the ugly secret and the trauma that was going on. And I had to protect the secret. A lot of times I hung out in dark places. I needed to be around people that were somewhat at the same level that I felt I was at. And that's where I felt comfortable. They were dark, they were loud, and I felt I could relate to that group. I could not relate to showing up at a black tie event and talk to people at those situations. I did not fit there. I could not relate to those people. I can today, but I couldn't back then. There wasn't a lot of sex that came with it. It was the companionship. I was very scared of relationships and very awkward in relationships because I had no trust. When you're abused, you're in a very lonely place. I just felt I could hide in those places, and that's where I felt more comfortable.
The Flames make a change. Evison goes wide on Carney. Plus minus leader scores! Sheldon Kennedy, it's 1-0. Calgary.
Well, you might say that Sheldon Kennedy has just redeemed himself for his actions in Game 1.
Detroit had had enough of Sheldon. I was traded to Calgary, and I really started going downhill that year.
If you go back to Game 1, you remember he took that very undisciplined penalty, really snuffed out any opportunity for Calgary to get back into that hockey game.
Graham James was coaching out of the same arena that we were playing out of, the junior team, and he was trying to insinuate himself back into my life. And I had met Jana, and Jana and I got married. She became pregnant with our daughter, Ryan. I just couldn't take it anymore. I'd see Graham with these kids. Nobody was doing anything about it. And you know, Jana and now Ryan were in my life. I remember the struggle that I was having. How do I tell? Should I tell? And then seeing Graham and letting it go. And then seeing Graham again with these kids and not doing anything about it. And thinking to myself that, you know, I know he's hurting other kids. And if nobody else is going to do anything about it, I have to. And I remember the fear of nobody believing me. Because forever I was portrayed in the newspapers as this out of control, drunk, wild, bad person. but I had nowhere else to turn.
He was absolutely a mess. He was crying hysterically. Like, I truly couldn't understand anything that he was saying. He went through about a box of Kleenex on the side of the bed. I remember him just leaning over and wiping his eyes with Kleenex. And I couldn't, he was shaking. He was physically shaking. And I couldn't, like I said, I couldn't imagine what it could be. What could it possibly be?
Yeah, it was just hard. It was a.
He was afraid of people not believing him. He was terrified of that. I said, I believe you.
I remember the relief. There was a huge relief that I told somebody what happened. But I also felt a huge sense of fear as well. Because now I've got to deal with what scared me so much to be running for all these years. And I've got to face all this stuff and all the questions.
My sister was the first one to be abused. And we decided to confront my father. And I will never, ever in my entire life forget this moment where, like, we opened up the door to my house and my sister was there right beside me. I just was trying to breathe, and I looked at them both, and I looked at him, and I just said, like, I want you to admit it. I want you to admit what you've done. And my mom was so confused in that moment, and I don't remember what he said, but he admitted it about both of us. I think he said something like, yes, I abused you and your sister. And my mom fell apart, and I just cried and cried and cried. And you better believe that after this ended, my sister went home, everything went back to normal.
I was taking on the Holy Grail. And they did not want to see a sexual assault scandal happen in this game.
Hockey didn't want to hear it. I don't think society wanted to hear it, but in Canada, hockey is society. Hockey is our number one sport. Hockey is our hero.
And I remember him playing in Boston and guys on the other team going up to him, and Eric Lindros and guys like tapping him on the pads, like, you know, that took a lot of guts to do what he did.
I'd signed a contract with the Boston Bruins. I remember coming back to Calgary. The Bruins played in Calgary, and that's where it all went down. I remember the front page of the paper flying in that day, and it was "Stand Up for Sheldon" on the front page of the Calgary Sun. My career was pretty much done anyway. I just knew that I wasn't going to be playing the game of hockey anymore.
The sports world was shocked this week by a nightmarish story of sexual abuse, one that could happen in any town. A hockey coach in Canada is now in jail after admitting that he molested 2 of his teenage players. One of the victims, now a professional athlete, is speaking out. in the hope of helping others. And our Bill Ritter is here with a story, and quite a story.
Quite a story, Joan. You know, professional hockey is considered a man's world where tougher is better. Players are legendary for hiding their injuries. So it's really all the more amazing that Sheldon Kennedy is now coming forward.
I just really think that is courageous to come out and talk about it.
Yeah, a lot of people do. All the sports columnists writing about how courageous it is. For Sheldon, I think it is not so much a question of courage as it is survival.
I didn't know how to react to it. You know, I haven't even done anything. I didn't see myself as doing anything other than what I needed to do. But meanwhile, people saw me as this hero. And I felt that I needed to live up to that billing.
He's out of professional hockey, but he has a new goal, to create a ranch for young victims of sexual abuse.
Kennedy has been rollerblading across Canada to raise awareness and money to fight child abuse. It's a quest that has made him a hero.
This is a young man, and I mean that sincerely, a young man that is making a difference in society.
The skate was a very spontaneous decision to do something. We hadn't given it much thought. I think Sheldon and I are big believers in if you think too much about everything, you'll never do anything. So we went down this path of doing the inline skate across Canada in 1998, and to be very honest, I was amazed at how well it was going. We were just on an absolute roll.
Averaged 98 kilometers a day every day for 4.5 months straight. Stopped in every town, had conversations, met with the mayors, pushed for change, tried to raise the awareness. It was hard. The skate was hard.
Very obvious right from the beginning that this was way bigger than they ever could have imagined, that people were going to respond in such a positive way. I don't think there was any way that either of you could have anticipated the magnitude of how much it meant to people.
I'd have 10, 15, 20 disclosures a day. And they'd be from a young girl or a young boy or an old lady or an old man. And you know what? The damage was the same.
Sheldon, I'd like to give you this New Testament.
And it was the first time that they had the ability to talk about it, and they would talk to me.
And as an abused person myself, I realize how important it is to have real peace.
I always thought that I was alone. Always. And that I was the only one that this happened to. And that's what kept me going. I needed to be this voice, and you know, and if I could keep these issues in the front page of the paper long enough for change to happen, that was my role. That was my part. That's what I could do.
You gotta know you're a hero.
Sheldon Kennedy.
Sheldon Kennedy. I was more comfortable getting locked up in the back of a police car, getting thrown in jail. And all of a sudden, I'm getting awards and people were recognizing me and standing ovations. I didn't know how to accept what was happening. I didn't know how to accept the way people felt or what they saw that I couldn't see. Talk about living that double life. Because the way I felt and the way I was living. I still wanted to numb out.
Since May, Kennedy's quest has made him a hero. But today, that image was in tatters. The former NHLer struggled to explain why he fled the scene of an accident. Last week, while fundraising in Edmonton, Kennedy crashed a truck that had been loaned to his foundation. He admits that he had had about 8 beers that night, and that the bag of marijuana found in the truck was his.
I got a phone call from the Edmonton police, and it felt like my whole life had kind of passed before me. More importantly, it kind of unraveled the skate. The credibility was challenged of Sheldon, and it was pretty clear that he probably wasn't ready to be the superhero for abuse prevention and bringing the issue forward because he had his own issues still to deal with.
I'm deeply disappointed in my actions in Edmonton, and I apologize to my family. Many professional therapists I spoke to prior to the skate were concerned about this journey, knowing that my own healing is still in progress. I suppose their concerns were valid. I still have a lot more healing to do.
Police say they lack the evidence to lay formal charges. It now seems that the court of public opinion will determine what price Sheldon Kennedy will pay for his indiscretion.
Sheldon Kennedy's dream of building a ranch for young victims of sexual abuse is over.
Kennedy announced he was several $100,000 short of his $3 million goal. Will donate the $1 million he did raise to the Red Cross.
I can tell you that I had no idea how difficult life would be after disclosure to try to get back on track and get to where I wanted to go, but you know, I kept thinking that, like, why am I so messed up? Like, I've now admitted that what's gone on, and you know, it's been a year since I disclosed, and tons of support from everybody on the outside world, and you know, that was a great decision, and thanks, and you've helped me to do this, and you've given a voice to this, and Sheldon Newsmaker of the Year, and all this support. But meanwhile, I was a friggin' train wreck.
After my abuse, I was very sexualized. Near the end of grade 8 and into high school, I actually started developing relationships online with men, older men. It's really fucking weird to talk about now, but they went on for years. Like years, I would be doing these things, and we would have conversations, we would get to know each other, and then we would be very sexual with each other. But as I grew up, like, I also went into that overachiever, get involved, overpleaser of everyone, best friend, outgoing, happy, beautiful little girl. That was me. And everyone in school knew it. Like, that's what I was looked at. Oh, it's Mickey Decker. Oh, she's like the greatest person ever. And that's sort of what I strived to be, was in every aspect of my life, I was the greatest person ever. And I made sure that no one ever would have second-guessed that.
As we got him back, little did I know that all of the damage was done, and there was a lot. Seeing your son in a psych hospital, behind a wall, locked up behind glass, crazier than a lunatic. I thought I was losing my son. Sorry. Every day, I wrote letters to him. I sprayed it with my own perfume. I used senses that would bring him back to me. But the complications of everything, of everyday life, it's eroded this family a lot. You wanted to fix the problems, and they weren't being fixed. And the damage that's done to a brain, my son's brain, when he's feeling that he can't be safe anywhere.
You might want to take a look at these scans I have on the screen here. This is the brain scan, and the area that is colored is the amygdala. That's a part of the brain that processes emotions. So when you look at somebody's face and you feel an emotion, fear, anger, sadness, the amygdala is the part of the brain that's working to process that emotion. Children that had experienced early abuse were shown faces, and children that didn't experience early abuse were shown faces. The children that experienced abuse years before had much more activation of the amygdala. They had to make that area work harder.
To try to find that emotion.
Right, lasts in the brain. The amygdala is involved in processing all sorts of emotion, and you can imagine if that area has to work harder, that you're going to be more preoccupied by that. And I think that's probably a feeling that you've had.
Yeah.
Beyond drug and alcohol and substance abuse that you went through, did you know that that was rooted because of the abuse, or did you think that you just had problems for a long time and you didn't know why, and it took you a while to realize where it came from, what ignited it?
I just knew that drugs and alcohol worked, right? And they worked for me getting out of myself, and they worked for me for temporarily not wanting to kill myself. And then eventually they worked against me, and then started making me very depressed. And I thought that if I went to a treatment center for 10 months down in California and really worked hard, did a lot of hard work around the abuse stuff, and thought, oh, wicked, I got the abuse stuff out of my way, I can go have a cocktail, right? But that wasn't the case, right? I was as bad or worse than I ever was. And because you know what, then I didn't have any excuses why I drank. I was just, you know, I was still this drunk.
I was making a documentary about child sexual abuse, and someone I knew said, oh, you should interview Sheldon Kennedy. And it turns out he was in rehab. We had an immediate connection over the phone because I'm also a victim of child sexual abuse and incest. I had never met somebody who understood me the way Sheldon did. He was just extremely easy to talk to. I instantly loved him. I just thought he was so charismatic and sweet and vulnerable, and we just became really good friends right away, and sort of became friends. And then he got a injury. He was lifting weights one day and he had a hernia injury, and he had to go back to Canada. Once he got back to Canada, I couldn't get him on the phone. He disappeared, and I freaked out. I flew up to Canada and found him, and he was a different person.
It's really hard to be Sheldon Kennedy's daughter.
It was really unpredictable, I think, is the most scary part about it. Like, he would just get angry over somebody cutting him off in the road, and it'd just be like a switch turned off, and he was seeing red. He'd always say, "Oh, I'm not mad at you. Like, it's not you at all. I'm sorry I take it out on you." But, I mean, it doesn't really help.
He drank a lot. He was volatile, had a lot of rage and anxiety and anger and shame. It was like all of his stuff from his past was on the surface when he was not sober. He didn't have a governor inside to help him regulate how his abuse affects him.
Yeah, it just got ugly. I was divorced and on my own, and my life was spiraling out of control.
I had questioned myself, like, what are you doing here? But I was very attached to Ryan, and I knew that my presence there helped bring some stability into the family when Ryan was with us.
I started to really grasp what had happened when I was in grade 4, when everybody else started to grasp it, when everybody else started to kind of tease me about it at school. And grade 4 was a rough year. And my dad had also gone away again to rehab that year, so I didn't have my dad then either. I didn't like to talk about it. To me, my dad was I was just embarrassed, and I just wanted it all to go away. I started to really resent him. I hated it.
I mean, I was a daddy's girl when I was a girl, when I was really little, but I mean, just sometimes it was so hard to love him.
More than anything else in his world, Ryan's happiness and welfare was very, very paramount to him. So I would question, like, well, why are you drinking? Are you kidding me? Like, you have a daughter. Someone who loves his daughter so incredibly much, like more than anything in the world, was still making these decisions. It became clear that he didn't have a power over it. Sheldon had been getting increasingly more paranoid. There were a few times that he would wake Ryan up in the middle of the night and take her to a hotel because he was afraid people were coming into the house.
Cocaine for me made me paranoid to begin with, but then you add on the trauma that went on with thinking people are in the room and coming to get you. And I swear to God, there was people there.
He was in some bad shape sometimes when I talked to him, and he would admit it, but then he'd go missing, kind of, and you wouldn't be able to get a hold of him. And I could kind of just tell, like, it could be off the rails here, especially if Ali doesn't stick around.
There were times when I'm like, F you, dude. I'm out of here. Many times. But I would never have given up on him, ever, because I knew that pain so well, and I knew the shame, and I just knew how he really was underneath all of that. We all thought he was gonna die, and we all were waiting for that.
When you mix alcohol and you mix drugs and you mix sexual abuse together, I think it's such a volatile thing that you never know which way it's going to go.
He bought a ranch. And I remember he picked me up and we drove out to the ranch. He was going to renovate it. I was thinking, like, what's he doing? He's way out in the country, kind of isolated from everybody. And he disappeared. We couldn't get a hold of him.
I was starting to question myself. Will I ever get out of this craziness? I just wanted to be the dad I knew I wanted to be, and I wanted to be the person that I knew I could be, and I just didn't know how to get there, and killing myself was the only way I knew left that worked.
He called me from there. He said, like, I'm in bad shape. Like, you know, here's what happened. He spent time in his basement, in behind his furnace with a shotgun and a bunch of coke, hiding from nobody. I'm like, holy shit. His demons were at their very worst. Like, that's what was coming after him, and he hit rock bottom. Man, that must have been lonely.
I was at the point of dying, but I knew who I could be if I could only get out of this. I ended up in that shitty, dark furnace room near dead, and I had been in high-end treatment centers, 7 of them. Well, what happens when, you know, this happens to kids and they have nothing? I know where it ends up. They end up dead. I think that was the decision that it came down to for me. I needed to give it one more shot.
He didn't do what he could have done. And all the work and everything, the world's a better place for him. If he would have made the different decision that night, kids would have been going through pain, or they wouldn't have places to go to. Like, the guy's unbelievable. You know, he kind of went from the brink to, like, doing what he's doing now. It's just, I have so much admiration for him.
If I see my abuser again, I'm going to kill him with my bare hands.
You're so full of anger, Graham, which is normal, man. Right?
I don't feel normal. That's
I know,
where I struggle.
No, I'm not saying that. The way you feel is normal for what happened to you. And anger comes from fear. We're scared that we're going to fail at recovery too. Right? Because we failed at everything else in our goddamn life, right? The same shit that I had to go through, you're going through. I don't deserve to have a good life because I was bad and I did something to deserve this shit. That's not the case, man. Right? But that's the way we feel. That's the way our brain is working. I don't feel normal. What the fuck is wrong with me? Can't somebody just fix me? Just fix me. Fix it. Right? I remember the pain. I cried and cried. I couldn't open my mouth without crying. Just crying. It hurts. You know, we're coming through the pain, Mickey, right? It's lots of pain. And
Mickey asked me a good question. She said, what's the worst thought that you've ever had? And I told her about this tree that is in my neighbor's backyard, and how there were many times where I contemplated tying a noose and just jumping off the tree and letting whoever find me.
I think my biggest fear, is if I'm doing all of this and then in the end of it, if I just end up hurting somebody like I was hurt, that's what I'm really afraid of. because all you hear is you live what you learn, you live what you learn, like, and it's just so frustrating.
Well, I think, Mickey, I mean, I think that when you commit to change, you change the way that you learn. We're not what we lived. We have control of that, right? You could be the best mother out there because of what you've gone through. No shit, you would have those thoughts. From what I understand about this stuff, that would be a very normal fear for you to have, Mickey.
At what point is it going to feel like it's normal, though?
We're not going to be normal for the rest of our life. It ain't going to happen. But that doesn't mean that we can't have a good life. I have a good life, but it's going to take a commitment.
I want to be the person who I remember my parents talking about as a kid and saying, you know, you're going to grow up and do amazing things in the world. And right now, it really doesn't feel that way.
Oh my God, when I was 23, I was right in the middle of it. I hadn't even told anybody yet, and my life was a shit show. I never in my life thought that I could shut my head off and that this chaos of my life would ever end. I just never thought it was possible, and today, you know, it is. Like, it is possible. And when I cry today, I cry because of gratitude, right? What chokes me up the most today is gratitude, because I never believed that I could have the things that I have in my life today, you know?
Bonjour tout le monde. Thank you. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is really an honor to be here today at the Calgary Child Advocacy Center. By putting a number of agencies under the same roof, this center will be a one-stop shop for abused children in need. Now, there is someone here today to whom I want to express my personal gratitude. Indeed, he merits the gratitude of the entire nation, and that is Sheldon Kennedy. Sheldon knows firsthand the horrors of such abuse, and he has worked tirelessly to prevent it. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to announce officially that from now on, this center will be known as the Sheldon Kennedy Child Advocacy Center.
I remember never being able to rely on him. I was the kid that had to stay after school because my dad wasn't there to pick me up. It was his day, he must have forgot. It took my dad 10 years to finally be who he is today, and that's a great person. I think he had to do a lot of soul searching to make his anger and frustration go away. What has made him today, he's done that a lot himself. The trauma of the abuse never goes away, but I mean, you can work past it. You can make yourself stronger. You can use it to your advantage by helping other people who are in a dark place. And that's what my dad's doing. Yeah, I'm proud of him for that.
Mr. James, hi, I'm Bob McEwen from CBC News. We're very much hoping you'll sit down and talk to us.
Not a chance.
Talk to you about your life in Mexico, about your pardon, Would you care to comment on any of that, sir?
No, I wouldn't.
Time in a low place, surrounded by what I've made. Need to get away from what relates and what was done, 'cause it's all over.